Good morning and welcome to this talk. We're going to talk about the patterns that we can get into with codependency, especially the one of needing to help other people. And if you're listening here live on Facebook, we are in Women Healing from Emotional Abuse with Power, Passion, and Pleasure Facebook group. Or later, you might listen to this on YouTube, my YouTube channel, Pleasure for Health. So please feel free to follow and like any of the videos that you see either in the group or on YouTube. My name is Ailsa Kepi, and I am an intimacy and relationship coach as well as body worker. And I am now also owner of a retreat center in Nova Scotia, Canada. So there's many opportunities for me to both work with my own stuff, work with other people that are going through different types of relationship issues or betrayals. And I find it really interesting because also this is my own story as well, with this idea of codependency and how we get into these types of patterns. So we're going to talk a little bit about the wounded healer, which some of us may resonate with as an archetypal role. We've probably often considered ourselves, if you're in this group or watching this, as a healer, that our mission in the world is to help other people heal. And I think that's beautiful and lovely. And it brings up a really good point, because very rarely are we just the healer part. There's also the wounded part that we have to consider in this wounded healer. And what does that really mean? Well, it doesn't just mean that you had a hard life, which, you probably did. Most of us have had different issues come up during our life around relationships, particularly. But the woundedness has persisted and has led to particular ways of acting, ways of creating self-esteem in our actions and behaviors, and ways that we kind of make ourselves feel good. Which isn't unusual, but we need to be aware that we have that, and that we're not just healing other people out there, that we also need to heal our place in here so that we can have a more balanced viewpoint on this. And what I would say, codependency is an obvious thing of, well, where is the hook? Why do we do it? Why do we try to help other people? And it's interesting to ponder that, really, as opposed, why are we often attracted to narcissistic people, even though in our mind we're like, I don't like someone who's self-centered. I'm not self-centered. Surely I'm very thoughtful and compassionate and caring and empathetic, and I feel other people's feelings, and I want to help them and all of that. So why do we keep getting in relationships with narcissistic people often? Or, what is the attraction there? And what I would say that we need to at least consider is that we're projecting the wounded part onto the other. So we see the potential in someone else. We maybe also get attracted to addicts quite a bit. We see the good in the other person, right? We know that they've suffered and they're wounded and they need care, they need love, they need support. And so we often realize that aspect of that person is there, and absolutely it is. But what we really need to start with is, have we done that for ourselves also? Have we cared about and spent time with and helped to heal that wounded part of ourselves? Or are we just projecting it out into the world? So here's the codependent part, right? If we don't see that part in ourselves, or we don't want to, or we don't want to admit our own weakness, whatever that is, we project it onto the other person. And they may have a part that needs healing. I'm not saying they don't, but if we are going after that because we're not looking at our own woundedness, so we project that onto the other person, they're wounded, they need help, they need healing, they need us to be compassionate and caring and kind and loving, and we need to find ways of helping them feel better and, filling that hole for them or whatever. Now we have more of a hook because we're denying that in ourselves and we're fixing it out there. And as long as you're fixing stuff out there, that's only half the picture. So this story that we come up with is something like, I'll be healed if I caretake someone else. I'll be healed because I'm putting all of my effort, my caretaking into helping this person. It often backfires because, a person has to want to heal themselves. And so if we're caretaking that person and they decide to not heal or they don't heal the way we were hoping, often we feel devastated. And, we could sink into a depression or or get angry. There could be a rage there too, that this person didn't accept our help or didn't take it or didn't, why can't they choose to find their own thing? Many of us have that kind of feeling like, why can't they just see it the way I see it, right? And, this is similar to actually a narcissistic rage when you prick their ego. Now it's like, well, you didn't accept my help, therefore you're what do you do with that, right? So we can learn to kind of notice that trigger in ourselves and look at, why am I helping someone else? Is this for me or is it for them? And I think that's a question that, I've come to ask more and more in lots of my trainings. What are we doing this for? Is this for me? Is this for you? Is this for both of us? And am I really honoring all of the aspects of that? So if we notice this trigger in ourselves, I need to help this person, that is a little flashing light to go, do I really need to help this person? Maybe you're their mother. This is always a difficult one. It's easy to become codependent as a mother because it's like, do I need to help this person? They're my kid. Where does the responsibility of mothering end? Does it ever end? These are questions you have to seriously consider. But if you just assume that your 30-year-old child, you need to help them pay their rent, give, I don't know, do their laundry for them, all of these things. I'm not saying those are good or bad or otherwise. Maybe there's a time and place to do that. We need to notice what we're doing that for. Is this the homeless person down the street? What is our responsibility to them? I'm not saying don't ever help these people, but ask yourself, to what end am I helping them? And if they don't choose to accept my help, or if they don't heal the way I'm hoping they heal, am I going to feel like they've rejected me? Or am I going to feel less than because of that? Or can I be detached about the outcome? So there's a couple questions we can also ask ourselves when being asked for help, because most likely many of us that are empathic people get asked for help all the time, and we need to decide, am I going to offer help in this particular instance or not? And aside from doing our own inner kind of questioning, we might want to ask ourselves some questions. So this is directly from a course I'm taking on the Jungian platform. So, I do at least acknowledge these aren't all my ideas, but I think they have some merit. So the first question that you might ask yourself is it an emergency? Is this an emergency? If someone's asking for help, do they need your help? Like, they've called you, they're stuck on the highway, they have a flat tire, they need someone to come get them because whatever, CIA can't take them in the truck or whatever. There's been lots of things. Is it an emergency? Do they need help now because it's an emergency? If the answer is yes, great. If you have the capacity to help them, help them. If it's not an emergency and they're like, and there's a judgment there. So if you deem that this is not an emergency and they're like, well, I need help dealing with my partner, and they've been with their partner for 10 years, this is probably not an emergency. This is an ongoing thing. So the next question to ask ourselves then would be, are they asking for my help directly? There's a good question to think about. Have they asked me, Ailsa, I need you to help me, and here's why, or whatever, I need you to help me. Have they actually asked you, or are you assuming that you could be helpful and you're jumping in to help, right? Like they're telling you about, maybe they're telling you about their horrible relationship and they're just kind of complaining, and you go, oh, I know how some tools for that. Let me offer to help. That's different, right? You want to catch yourself there. Has this person asked for your help directly? And sometimes cultural differences might make this less or more direct. Some cultures are more direct, like that you can actually ask for help. Some cultures, they wouldn't ever ask directly for help. So you might need to know a little bit about their culture. But let's say they've asked you directly or as directly as is possible for them. And so then you can, say yes if you feel directly asked and you have the capacity, then great. If no, they haven't asked you, then you want to jump to the next question potentially and say, is this help time limited? So I think this is an interesting pause here. Is this time limited? So does it mean that they've asked your help forever and ever with their ongoing relationship issues? Or have they said, I need help to prepare for my date on Friday night, and therefore it's a 3-day window of help, potentially, right? Have they made a sort of time limit on this? I need help for the next year to pay my rent. Are you able or willing to do that? There's a definite time stamp on that, right? It's not forever and ever, you're now my fairy godmother, right? So is the help time limited? And you may have to negotiate that, and you might have to say, this help is time limited, or I can help in this time frame. So that might be something to consider. And then how much of your involvement will be needed? How much will you have to do, right? What are they expecting of you? Are they expecting a 24/7, call service so that you're willing? Are you expected to drop everything and rush over there every time they need to talk to you? What is that? What is the time involvement? Are they, you could say, I'm willing to help. I'm available on Sunday afternoons for a call for half an hour to check in how you're doing. This time I'll put aside for you every Sunday to talk over and give you some help. Or I'm willing to come over on Saturday and help you mow the grass. And it's 2 hours I have, and that's it, right? So you need to kind of decide that, because often our expectations, we might think, of course they don't think they're going to call me at 2 a.m. to come help them, but they might be thinking exactly that. They might be thinking, well, this person offered to help and I should be able to call them whenever I need help. So that's a good question to ask. And here's the last question, which I think is actually really interesting. Is making this agreement going to change the balance of power between you? That's a really interesting question. If you feel that you have some sort of power in your relationship by saying no, you have your own value system, you're standing up for yourself. Let's say you're a therapist, you have particular office hours, you get paid for your services. If you suddenly offer to help someone and now you're doing the same thing for free because they've asked for help, let's say, and that would change the power dynamics, right? Now you're not getting paid as a professional, you're getting asked as a friend, and this is going to change the power dynamics. And I'm not saying again that that's wrong, but you want to be aware that that is going to happen, and that you need to understand the power changes that are happening there in that. So if you say, yes, I'll be your emergency contact, and you find that you're getting called at all hours of the day and night, like, they have power over you. They can interrupt your life whenever they want, right? And you have to decide if that's going to change the balance of power and what you want to do about that and what power you have. And this is a big part of some of my coaching with relationships is what power do you have? What person does the other power have? How do you hold your power? How do you offer your power? How do you surrender your power sometimes on purpose, right? You don't have to be empowered personally all the time. You could surrender your power, but you need to be aware that you're doing it. And in doing that, you kind of have a power, right? Because you know what you're doing with your power. So I think that's such an interesting question. So these are a few things that we can do to help ourselves be less codependent and less falling into that I need to help you kind of phase that a lot of us do fall into. And if you find that going through these questions is annoying and you're like, oh, I'm just a helpful person. I just want to get out there and help people. It's a bit of like withdrawal for ourselves around being helpful. And it's an addiction. It's a codependency. It's something that is calling to us, and we want to, we react to that trigger before we think through things. So it's a little bit of something to kind of take a step back and really look at what's going on here. And how do we overcome that? Well, we often outgrow these kinds of things more than we work through them. We kind of outgrow them by growing into knowing that we are okay and that we don't have to give up ourselves in order to be healed, that we can grieve our lack of support. So something like coming to a place from, instead of thinking I'll be healed through caretaking other people, we come to something like, there are many ways I can be of service without depleting myself or leading to codependency. So I can find how to be of service in a way that doesn't deplete me over time. And it often means grieving our own lack of support, potentially when we were children or, at any point during our lives, and actually grieving that we didn't have that kind of support. So we need to give it to ourselves, right? And that isn't a selfish thing. That actually is a very in service way to be, because once we've grieved and we feel compassion for ourselves, we're actually able to help other people in real ways that doesn't end up becoming a codependency. They don't feel that we're going to be mad if they don't accept our help. Like, that's their prerogative too, right? So we have a much more balanced way of being in relationship. Bearing in mind that if we change our way of being in relationship, we often will elicit change in our current relationships. And so our current partners or friends may find that they really love our growing and outgrowing these patterns, and then we can become better friends. And some of them may kind of disappear off into the ether because they don't want to be part of a healthier relationship. They liked the codependency, and so that's fine, and that's their choice, right? And you'll probably attract some different people into your life. So it does shake things up, but so does any change in ourselves. So, for me, this has been a really great way to try to move forward. And I have to come back to it many times, right? Because often when I'm refusing to grieve my own losses, I start trying to help and manage other people's stuff. And I notice that in myself. So I'm like, hang on a second. I need to do some really tender care of myself here for a bit. So hopefully that's something that maybe resonates with you too, and that is helpful. Those questions, those kind of things to think about when taking on the role of helper, healer, and really knowing where the wound is. Is it in us? Is it in them? It's probably both. And have we tended to our own self? So thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful Monday morning. And I will talk to you all soon. Check me out on Pleasure for Health YouTube channel. You can also check out my website, pleasureforhealth.com. All right, take care.